A1UTV presents the Halo Locker Sway Bar.
So what's going on today, everybody? I hope you guys are all doing well in your little quarantine state. I'm going to go ahead and rip this stock sway bar out of this Turbo S and start working on getting that Halo Locker's electronic sway bar installed. Stay tuned. This should be a fun little video. Been staring at this thing for a couple days now. You know, I've just been locked up, cooped up, not motivated. We're going to get motivated today. All right, to give a quick rundown of how this works, this is your stock rear sway bar right here. It's this bar. This is what we're going to be replacing. We're going to go ahead and undo the upper and lower bolts on these brackets, and we're going to disconnect this QD, and the whole thing should come out for the most part. Basically, what this sway bar does is it keeps this machine flat, keeps it steady. It connects the right trailing arm to the left. So when you go around corners, when your machine starts to tip like this, okay, what happens is that this trailing arm comes up, right? Machine tips this way, this trailing arm comes up. Well, when this trailing arm comes up, it pushes up on that sway bar, okay? When that sway bar rotates up, it pulls up on this trailing arm. So now when your machine tips this way, that sway bar is lifting up on that inside tire. And what that does is it counteracts that body roll and it makes it go back the other direction. This is good for when you go around corners, when you're hauling butt, because when you come into a corner, you don't want to tip over and roll. And that's what the sway bar does. It's like an anti-roll device, okay? One thing that we're looking to accomplish is we're trying to disconnect the right side from the left side. And the way that Halo Lockers went about doing that is they installed an electronic actuator or a motor, however you want to do it. And basically what it does is it disconnects the right side from the left side, all with the push of a switch. This is the electronic actuator right here. And basically this right here is held in place with an anti-rotation device. And that is basically just a glorified bracket that sits in place, and it holds it where it's supposed to be. And then it allows, when it's engaged, it locks this side to that side. And when it's disengaged, it allows them to articulate freely. And that's going to allow us to articulate over rocks without the risk of pulling any of our tires off the ground. Because everybody knows once you start removing tires from the ground, you either start losing traction or you run the risk of rolling over.
So right here I'm removing in the QD, and then I'm going to remove the bolt, and I'm going to rotate up the connecting link. Hey guys, real quick, Dave here. Just want to let you guys know, if you guys want to make your own set of sway bar disconnects, just like seen pictured here, be sure to check out my video called DIY Sway Bar Disconnects. It's located on the Garage Stuff playlist on A1UTV.
All right, so now that we got the sway bar out, we can compare the two side by side.
So here's the stock one, and obviously there's the Halo Lockers electronic sway bar. One thing that I like about this sway bar is that it's adjustable. So not only is it disconnectable, but it has 3 different adjustments. Also, one thing I want to point out is the fact that this motor here, if you notice the orientation of it, this is the way that it's going to be inside the machine. So the plug and the actuator is going to be on the passenger side, and it's actually going to have the plug is going to be on the top. All right, guys. So everything that basically comes in the with the wiring comes in this bag, and it's literally a plug-and-play system. So what you would do is you take this end plugs into your sway bar, just like so. All waterproof connectors, mind you. What you do is you then run this switch and the rest of the wiring up to the dash. They went ahead and they labeled everything for you as well. Black, green, blue. They even went ahead, color coded their wires. got a red wire in here and a black wire. Obviously, these are going to hook up to your accessory circuit. And then basically, what you're going to do, if I can make this work here, plug these two on. Okay, and now that says sway bar disconnected. So we should have full rotation here of the sway bar. And then now, when we go ahead and we actuate it back the other direction. And if you notice, the light switch will actually light up. And it says sway bar locked. So here's one thing I want to see. I want to see what happens when they're off, when they're at a different angle. Now let's see what happens when one is rotated up like this. And then let's lock it and see what happens. Can I get these wires cut? Now look, it's still moving until you go flat. Oh, that's such a cool little feature. I was worried about that. I wasn't sure how it was gonna, relatch and go back and gauge. So that's really comforting to know that I don't have to wait till it's level before I hit the button. I can hit the button at any time, and as soon as my suspension goes back to level, it's gonna lock. Freaking sweet. Let's get this thing installed. We're gonna get this wiring ran. We're gonna get this sway bar thrown in there. We're gonna get our bushings back installed. We're gonna get our links installed, and that should be about it. Here we go.
Okay guys, so we've already gone ahead and we've ran our switch into our dash. Now we got to do is run the positive and the negative leads, and then we got to run the rest of the wires right underneath the tunnel. So what I've gone ahead and done, you can see we've got our switch in there. Here's our positive and negative leads. I'm gonna run these back through the firewall and hook these up to the bus bar. I need to extend this little negative lead just a little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. And in the meantime, we're gonna pull this tunnel off, and then we're gonna run our plug all the way back to the sway bar. All right guys, well I've gotten the tunnel installed. I've gotten the seats put back in. Everything's back to where it's supposed to be, except for the negative wire down there. I gotta run that negative wire back through the firewall, and then I have to go ahead and put a couple of ends on it and this positive wire, and then we will be done for the wiring. And then all we got to do next is take the sway bar and actually put it in the machine. All right guys, so we've got our sway bar ready. I want you to keep track of the orientation. Remember that the plug and everything, the motor and whatnot goes on the passenger side. We've got some new bolts to replace our quick disconnect ones. There's one final piece that I haven't showed you guys yet. I'll show you that here in just a second. Let's go ahead and set this camera up. Let's get this thing installed. All right, so now that we've got that thing hooked up, that was pretty easy, by the way. If you remember when you took your stock bar out, it had a couple bushings and a bracket that held it on. You're gonna reuse those if you have a Turbo S. If you don't have a Turbo S, just verify that your bushings are 28.5 millimeter bushings. The 27 millimeter ones, like these ones, see they say 27 right there on the back. I'm sure you can make them work, but they're just a little bit too small. So the last thing that we got to do, now that we've got it all hooked up, is we have to put in the anti-rotation bracket. All right, boys and girls. So now if you look down here at our motor, right down there on the bottom, we've got two little bolt holes. Now those bolt holes are going to be where our anti-rotation bracket goes. And now this bracket, so this bracket is going to sit basically like this. However, I'm probably going to have to use a couple spacers in there just because the dimensions are a little bit different than a traditional XP. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to use a little bit of some spacers in here. Then I'm going to drill a hole and then just run some bolts through. When it comes to this motor here, the motor itself doesn't need a lot of, it doesn't need a lot to hold it in place. The only reason why it's there is because it engages the keys to lock the sway bar, or it disengages. That's really it. You don't want it to be spinning around and round and round, obviously, but the guys from Halo Lockers told me you could literally like zip tie this thing if that's the way you wanted to go about it, and it would totally work. Let me give you a little bit of advice, okay? If you're gonna be installing this thing, see that little bracket right there? Put that bracket on before you put it in there. Otherwise you'll be like me.
So if you look, I went ahead and I've installed the bracket to the actual motor itself. Now here on the Turbo S is where I'll need a little bit of a spacer because this bracket just isn't quite the right reach. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some spacers to put in here between this heat shield and this bracket, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and drill all the way through everything, and then I'm just gonna put some bolts in here to hold it still. This bracket doesn't need a lot. It doesn't take a lot to hold this motor in place, and really all it needs to do is just stay stationary.
All right, guys, so here's a little bit of information I want to share with you. Once you get this bracket installed, what you're going to want to do is go ahead and get your drill in there and drill that top hole, okay? You're probably going to have to do it with a smaller drill, so if you don't have one, find one. You're going to want to drill a small hole in that top hole through the bracket. You're going to go straight through the body panel and right behind the passenger seat. When you go to drill the second one, it's really difficult to get a drill in there. So what you're going to do is you're going to come in from the opposite side inside the cab, and you're going to measure 2 1/4 inches down, and you're going to drill your second hole. Damn, son, that's pretty good. I think that's pretty good. I didn't mean to do that. That was pretty good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to throw these 2 bolts in here. And then what we got to do is finish up the last little bit of wiring. And that is right up here in the front. So basically all we got to do is just put 2 little leads on the ends of this, trim it, of course, and then hook it up to our bus bar. And then we are operational, and we can take this thing outside and we can test it out. Stay tuned. All right, so I went ahead and I found some little spacers here, and these are what I'm going to put between the bracket and the heat shield. That way it fits perfectly. If you're here to judge my wiring, I suggest you go judge somewhere else. All right, boys and girls, remember that when you do this, you want to make sure that you're putting your linkage on the outside of the sway bar. Linkage goes on the outside, not on the inside. These are 18mm bolts. I suppose we could put the bolts in the correct direction. Okay guys, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this ramp to test it. Right now we got the sway bar locked. I'm gonna position this camera and I'm gonna show you guys what happens when that sway bar is engaged and you start articulating your machine. So right now I've got the sway bar engaged and locked. This is gonna operate similar to how your stock sway bar would. Give me 1 second, I'm gonna pull up on this ramp and I'm gonna park it and I'm gonna show you what's going on. So if you guys look at the back, you notice how the trailing arms pretty level. The reason for that is due to the fact that sway bar is engaged. If you notice, we've got a tire off the ground. Now, we're pretty high up in the air. That's the beauty of long travel. And I don't have a sway bar in the front of my machine. So try to keep that in mind as well. Really pay attention to the rear though. Right now, everything's level. When I back this machine off of this ramp here, what's gonna happen is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna disconnect the sway bar and we're gonna pull back up onto this ramp. We're gonna see how far we can go. See if we can go any higher and we'll see what happens in the rear here. Keep in the back of your head how level that looks, even though we're sitting up on a ramp. Now, notice how much farther I made it up that ramp before that tire left the ground. See now? We are able to 100% flex. That thing is so freaking cool. And I mean, we could have probably kept going. I think that bad boy's pretty sweet. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments what you guys think of this whole sway bar. I want to give a shout out to them guys over at Halo Lockers. They're the ones who supplied this awesome sway bar. Thanks a bunch, guys. It's great working with you. Right on, guys. Well, that's the installation of the Halo Lockers electronic sway bar. I hope this was informational, and I hope this made it a little bit easier. If you guys are, interested in getting this sway bar, you can find it at Halo Lockers website. And also, if you guys would be so kind, make sure you go check out their Facebook page. Give them a little thumbs up, show them a little bit of appreciation from me. Yeah, I can't wait to get it out on the trails, man, and get some real world review / experience with it, and let you guys know how it works. Other than that, keep on trucking, fellas. We'll see you guys soon, all right? Appreciate you for watching. Later.